And more on our top story this hour, Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee has set out his vision to rejuvenate the city with fresh measures to tackle housing, livelihood and talent issues. The city has been closed off from the world for nearly 3 years amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, for a closer look, we are joined by political analyst Sonny Lo. Now, Sonny, it's Mr. Lee's maiden policy address that he said was about bringing hope and confidence to Hong Kong residents. Do you think he achieved that objective?
Basically, Mr. Lee has done a good job in laying out a blueprint to revive Hong Kong's economy and, most importantly, to maintain and enhance its competitiveness by introducing a talent scheme and also shortening the wait time for public housing. So overall, he did a good job.
Now, would you say, like, in this sense of one of the biggest challenges for Hong Kong being to revive the economy, and that's been battered by the pandemic, are restrictions that are not fully lifted, are they still hurting local business sentiment? And how is the government balancing that need to both ramp up the economy and also the desires to protect the smaller businesses?
I think Hong Kong is still in a difficult time, and so the policy address today is trying to instill a sense of confidence among the people of Hong Kong. Because of the restriction on entry of foreign visitors, the government maintained the policy of so-called 0+3. But the business community has been lobbying the government to relax it to 0+0. And yet the government told the business community and the Hong Kong general public that at this moment, we have to maintain 0+3 policy. So in the short run, we can't change much. But in the long run, John Lee is trying his best to introduce a sense of confidence, especially to address the issue of livelihood, as pointed out by President Xi Jinping in his speech in Hong Kong on July 1st, 2022.
Now, apart from livelihoods, affordable housing has always been a key priority for Hong Kong. And that's despite many of the government's efforts. Many people still live in very cramped flats that are among the world's most expensive. What are the challenges that the government is facing when it comes to building these affordable housing options and also to protect the city's land at the same time?
There are several challenges encountered by the Hong Kong government. John Lee, in today's policy address, has mentioned the necessity of shortening the waiting time from 6 years to 4.5 years for people to go onto public housing units. It remains to be seen how this will be done. Secondly, he introduced a scheme of building up, so-called transitional public housing units for about 30,000 per year. 30,000 in the coming 5 years, so about 6,000 per year. But again, it remains to be seen how members of the public receive this message. The most important challenge for John Lee is to reduce red tape and reduce the administrative procedures, which are currently and previously very complex for citizens to apply for public housing estates. And secondly, in terms of land acquisition, there has been strong opposition from the rural sector and also from some landlords in terms of deploying public land for the usage of constructing public housing units. The government has to do more in this aspect, and today's public policy speech by John Lee remains quite cautious in terms of land acquisition. So basically, he is focusing on how to streamline the administrative process and procedures to deal with housing and livelihood issues.
And turning now to another issue of attracting talent, there's a special office that will be created to create incentives, and that was announced. All this is part of the city's move to attract and retain overseas talent. Now, to what extent do you think the government will be successful in reviving Hong Kong's status as a financial hub, especially now with still the zero COVID policy in place?
The talent committee mentioned by Mr. John Lee remains to be constructed, but from what we read from the policy address, he mentioned several issues, like, for example, the Hong Kong government is trying to attract top talents from the world, including mainland China, if they graduated from top-notch, top universities, top 100 universities in the world. That's number one. And number two, if these talents work overseas for 3 to 5 years. They can apply for jobs in Hong Kong, and there are some high-ended jobs positions in IT and AI sector attracting foreign talents and mainland talents. At the same time, the policy address also mentioned that in Hong Kong's economic sectors, the employers who lack the employees, they can indicate to the government specifically what kind of talents that they want, so that the Hong Kong government will import talents from mainland. So overall, the scheme is a kind of two-pronged strategies by the Hong Kong government to attract overseas and mainland talents. It remains to be seen how the overseas talents will be really attracted to Hong Kong. But for the mainland talents, I think in the short run and also in the long run, Hong Kong will rely on them.
Sonny, we really appreciate your insights. That was Sonny Lo, who's a political analyst from Hong Kong.